You know, when people talk about the Nobel Prize, it's a big deal, obviously, but
Oh,
have
absolutely.
you ever actually, like, stopped to think about what Alfred Nobel, the guy behind the prize,
Right.
what did he actually invent?
Yeah.
Because, like, most people, I kind of just went, dynamite, moving on.
Right. You think, okay, dynamite, big deal, makes sense.
Huge legacy, yeah, done.
But it gets way more interesting, like way more. He actually held over 350 patents.
350 patents.
350.
Yeah.
So not just dynamite.
Okay, now I'm picturing, like, a workshop bursting with crazy inventions. 350, that's wild.
Yeah.
What else did he create? Out of those 350, what else is noteworthy?
Well, there's one that ties directly into this whole benefit to mankind idea the Nobel Prize is built on, right?
Okay.
Illustite. So picture this. Smokeless gunpowder. Yeah, it was a huge deal. Like, game changer in military tech. I mean, it sparked patent wars, shaped how wars were fought.
So it's like a good invention, but also
Right.
not so good if you think about it.
It's complicated. I mean, it's a complex legacy, right? That's an understatement, probably.
Yeah, talk about a double-edged invention.
Sure.
So he makes a fortune, probably grapples with the impact, and then uses that to celebrate something positive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this realization that invention, this power, could be used for good or, well, for a lot less good.
Okay, but then how do you actually define what a benefit to mankind actually is?
Yeah, you'd think it'd be straightforward, right?
You'd think so.
Turns out, not so much.
How do you measure that?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
It's like, who gets to decide what helps humanity the most? And that's where the whole selection process for the Nobel Prize gets really interesting, because it involves thousands of experts and can take years of scrutiny. Years.
Years of scrutiny. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about pressure. Okay, so there's all these experts. They're looking at all this stuff for years. But is it true that only 3 people can actually win per prize?
That's right, only 3. And honestly, that rule, that 3-person limit, it causes more drama than you might think.
Really? So you're telling me there are cases where somebody probably should have won, but they didn't because it was already, like, full?
Yeah, because of the head count. Literally. It's happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's sparked some serious debate.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about the discovery of the structure of DNA.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge. Everyone
Yeah.
knows Watson and Crick.
Exactly. But their work, it was only possible because of Rosalind Franklin's X-ray diffraction images.
I've heard that name. What happened?
So Franklin, she died before the Nobel Prize was awarded. And the rules, they're pretty clear. You can't win posthumously.
Oh.
Yeah. So Watson and Crick, they get the prize. Well-deserved, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they still argue that Franklin's contribution, it was just as important.
Yeah, I see what you mean. If her work was so essential, it does make you wonder.
Right.
It's almost like a bittersweet moment in Nobel Prize history.
Definitely.
Okay, this is reminding me. You know there's no Nobel Prize for math at all, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the economics prize, which always seemed a little tacked on in my mind.
You're totally right. It's like mathematicians are still waiting for their Nobel moment, you know? And there are a bunch of theories floating around about why. Some say Nobel had a rivalry with a mathematician, so he left math out on purpose. Others say it was never even on the table.
Interesting.
Who knows, really? But the lack of a math prize, always a hot topic.
Yeah, I bet. And the economics prize being the odd one out, that's totally accurate.
It really is. Like, imagine the Nobel Prize is this exclusive club, right? And then economics shows up like 68 years later.
They're part of the group, but maybe not there from the very beginning.
Exactly. So it wasn't Nobel himself who established it. It was Sweden's central bank, and they did it in 1969.
Oh, wow. 68 years after the first Nobels were given out.
Yep, a late arrival, to say the least. And it's officially called the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel.
So it's like the honorary Nobel Prize.
Pretty much. But that name, it's caused its own share of arguments.
Makes sense.
Like, is it a true Nobel? What would Alfred think? Good questions.
It really makes you wonder what was going through his head. Like, if he could see how it all played out.
Right.
Okay, so someone does something amazing, could be any field, but how long do they have to wait? Like, how new does your work have to be in the running for a Nobel Prize?
Oh, that is a good question. And it's another one where the reality is more complicated than you'd think.
Really?
Yeah, because you'd assume it's got to be like cutting edge, right, from the last year or something.
Yeah, you'd think so. What's the newest, most amazing thing?
Right. But in some fields, and this is especially true in the sciences, the time between a discovery and when it actually gets that Nobel recognition, it can be decades.
Decades.
Yeah, decade.
Wow. Decades. So someone could be like going about their life.
Oh, absolutely.
And then decades later, suddenly.
A surprise, Nobel Prize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What causes a time lag like that?
Well, sometimes it's about really seeing a discovery's impact. Like, it takes time to really understand the implications, you know.
Okay, so give me an example.
Subramanian Chandrasekhar. He won the physics prize, but not until 1983 for work he did in the 1930s. Talk about a long game.
1930s, that's like you make a breakthrough, go live your life.
Right.
And then, boom, Nobel time.
What?
What was his work about?
It was about the evolution of stars. Fascinating stuff.
Stars, okay. So sometimes it takes a while to see how that knowledge plays out.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder, right? Like, what about those incredible minds who maybe made these huge discoveries but didn't live long enough to see that recognition?
Oh, that's true. They would have gotten the prize.
They're gone. It happens more than you'd think.
That is bittersweet. Like all that dedication, and they miss the celebration.
It really highlights how the Nobel Prize isn't just about being brilliant, it's also about the timing and how the whole scientific community kind of wraps its head around a new idea, which can take a while.
It's like science is trying to catch up to itself.
Sometimes, yeah. Okay, are you ready to dive into some, shall we say, juicier aspects of the Nobel Prize?
Oh, I am here for the juicy stuff. Lay it on me. What do we got?
Controversies.
Oh, there are always controversies.
Always. It wouldn't be as interesting without them, right?
Okay, so we talked about how Nobel wanted to recognize a benefit to mankind. Sounds simple, but I'm sure it's not. What are some of the times when that idea sparked debate?
Oh, there are some big ones. But honestly, even trying to define benefit to mankind, that's a whole debate in itself.
Oh, like who gets to decide that?
Exactly. But one of the most debated Nobel Prize decisions has to be the 1973 Peace Prize.
Ooh, the Peace Prize. Those always get attention. Who won in 73?
It was Henry Kissinger and Lick Through.
Okay, those names ring a bell, but remind me.
They were awarded the prize for their role in the Paris Peace Accords, trying to, end the Vietnam War.
Oh, right. And I'm guessing the controversy is because...
Because the ceasefire they negotiated didn't really work out. The war, it went on for years after they got that prize.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so people were furious, saying it was premature, that it just made the Nobel Prize look bad.
It's got to be awkward to win a Peace Prize and then the war just keeps going.
Understatement. And it's still debated today, actually.
Wow. Okay, that's one big example. What else? What other controversies are out there?
Well, there's a big ongoing one about Eurocentrism.
Eurocentrism. Okay, explain that one.
So there's been a lot of criticism, and it's totally understandable that the Nobel Prize, especially in literature, it tends to favor Western authors, Western traditions. Like, it's overlooking incredible writers from other parts of the world.
I see what you mean. So is it a global prize, recognizing everyone?
Yeah.
Or is it kind of stuck in one part of the world?
Exactly. And it makes you question how literary merit is decided in the first place. Is there actually a universal standard, or is it all just, like, shaped by where you're coming from, your background?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It reminds me, even when we think we're being totally objective, like, oh, I just like this book, there's a reason we connect to it,
Totally. And it's not always obvious what those reasons are. Okay, ready for another controversy?
Hit me.
This one's about revoking Nobel Prizes.
Wait, you can get a Nobel Prize taken away?
Well, that's the debate, isn't it? It's never actually happened, but there have been calls to do it.
Like with who?
Aung San Suu Kyi.
Oh, right. I remember when she won. It was a huge deal.
1991, she won for her peaceful resistance, fighting for democracy in Myanmar.
Yes.
But then, of course, the Rohingya crisis happened.
Right.
And, many people accused her of not doing enough, or even being complicit in what happened to the Rohingya Muslims.
It was a whole thing. So some people said she shouldn't have the Nobel Prize anymore.
Exactly. And it divided people. Like, can you judge someone's whole life based on later actions? Can you even revoke a Nobel Prize?
Yeah, that's tough. It's almost like the Nobel Prize becomes more than just, hey, you did something great. It's attached to this whole legacy.
100%. And legacies are complex.
Yeah.
They can change.
Okay, so we've talked about winners who maybe shouldn't have won. But what about the people who deserved to win but never did?
Oh, the should have been Nobels. It's a long list.
I bet.
But one of the most famous examples has to be Mahatma Gandhi.
Gandhi. Wait, he never won.
Nope. 5 nominations for the Peace Prize,
5.
and he never won.
I was just assumed he'd won. Like, if anyone deserved that prize, it would be him. What
I
happened?
think there's no easy answer.
Really?
It's still debated. Some people say that back then, the Nobel Committee had a much narrower view of what peace even meant.
What do you mean?
Like, they focus more on traditional diplomacy, ending wars with treaties and things like that. And Gandhi, his whole philosophy was nonviolent resistance, which was pretty radical for its time.
Interesting. So he was almost 2 ahead of his time?
Maybe. It makes you think, How much does the historical context, the world as it is at that moment, how much does that influence who gets recognized?
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
It really is. And it's not just the Peace Prize either. The Literature Prize has its own share of head-scratchers.
Like who?
Oh, big names. Leo Tolstoy,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, Jorge Luis Borges. All titans of literature, but none of them ever won.
It makes you wonder what went on in those meetings.
I know, right? Sometimes I wish we could go back in time and be a fly on the wall.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So what's the reason those writers were excluded?
It's hard to say for sure. There are always rumors, of course.
Oh, I bet.
Some people say it was politics. Some say maybe the people on those committees, they just had their favorites,
Yeah.
And sometimes it's probably as simple as there are just so many brilliant people out there, it's impossible to recognize them all.
It's still kind of wild to think that even those incredibly famous writers, they didn't get that final stamp of approval. It's like no matter how successful you get, there's always going to be that one award that kind of got away.
And I think that's true of pretty much any award, right? No matter how prestigious it is, there are always going to be people debating who should have won, who shouldn't have, and why.
It's a good reminder that even with something like the Nobel Prize, there's still this very human element to it all.
100%. There are actual people making these decisions with their own opinions, and sometimes those opinions, they line up with everyone else's, and sometimes they don't.
Okay, so we've talked about the behind the scenes, the drama, but what about the actual ceremonies?
Oh, yeah.
Are they as fancy as I imagined? I'm picturing like the fanciest event you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Tuxedos, ball gowns.
Champagne flowing. The works. So except for the Peace Prize, which is in Oslo, Norway,
Okay.
all the other Nobel Prizes, awarded in Stockholm, Sweden.
Oh, fancy.
And get this, it's on December 10th. That's the anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's a really nice touch, though.
Yeah, it adds a certain, gravitas. Yeah.
A little somber, but...
Yeah, it makes you think, right? Like all those years ago, this guy, and now look at what he started.
Exactly. So what's it like if you're a Nobel winner on that day? Like, walk me through it.
Picture this. You're in Stockholm Concert Hall.
Okay.
Dressed to the nines, obviously.
Okay.
And you're receiving this incredibly prestigious prize, and it's being given to you by, wait for it, the King of Sweden himself.
Shut the front door. The King of Sweden.
The King of Sweden.
That's amazing.
I know. Talk about a story for the grandkids.
I can't even imagine. Okay, so we've got the fancy clothes, the king, but there's got to be more, right? Like, what about the actual substance of the day? Do people talk? Do they give speeches?
Oh, absolutely. There are lectures, and they're a big deal.
Oh, okay. What kind of lectures?
So each Nobel laureate, they give a lecture on something related to their prize.
Okay.
It's their time to really dive deep into their work, share their insights. It's not just getting a medal. It's about contributing to the bigger conversation.
So like a deeper dive within the deep dive.
Exactly.
Perfect. And are these lectures, are they public? Can anyone go?
Well, not just anyone can waltz into the Nobel Prize ceremony.
Right. That would be chaos.
But those lectures, they've become a key part of Nobel Week. A lot of them are available to watch online, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so even if you and I don't get invited to the ceremony...
Someday.
Someday, maybe. But until then, we can still learn from these amazing minds.
Okay, you mentioned medals. So are the actual Nobel Prize medals as cool looking in person? Like, are they as impressive as you'd hope?
Oh, they're stunning. They're made of, get this, 18-karat green gold.
Fancy.
Plated with 24-karat gold, and they have this image of Alfred Nobel on them.
Of course they do.
In profile.
Very nice. And how big are we talking? Like a dinner plate?
No, not that big, but they're pretty hefty.
Okay. Could you pawn one, like, hypothetically, if one fell into my lap?
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
I don't know if I'd recommend it. It's not like you can just stroll into a pawn shop with a Nobel Prize medal and expect to, not raise some eyebrows.
Fair enough. But how much are we talking?
Their weight and therefore value, it kind of changes with the price of gold, but they're around 175 grams on average.
That's more gold than I could even picture.
Right. It's a lot.
So they're definitely under lock and key, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. There have been a few attempts to steal them over the years.
Really? People try to steal the Nobel Prize medals.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it makes sense they're valuable,
Yeah.
but it's not really about the money at that point, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's more about what it represents.
Exactly.
This is making me think, have there ever been, like, Nobel Prize dynasties? Like, families where multiple people have won?
Ooh, good question. And yeah, there have been a few. The most famous, the Curie family.
The Curies, of course. Marie Curie, right?
Yep. Marie Curie and her husband, Pierre, they won the 1903 Physics Prize
What was it for?
for their work on radioactivity.
Oh, right.
Huge. But then Marie, she wins again in 1911 for chemistry this time.
2 Nobel Prizes. She's a boss. What did she win for the second time?
She isolated pure radium.
That's amazing.
Right. So yeah, 2 Nobel Prizes for Marie Curie.
Wow. Okay, but it gets even better.
It does. Marie and Pierre, they had a daughter, Irene Joliot-Curie. And guess what?
She won a Nobel Prize.
You got it.
For what?
Chemistry, 1935, and she won with her husband, Frederick.
Stop it. So the Curies, 4 Nobels between them.
4 Nobels, 5 family members. Incredible, right?
That's wild. Were there any other families that have won multiple Nobel Prizes?
A few. Not quite as many as the Curies, but still.
Like who?
Okay, so there were some husband and wife teams. Gertie and Carl Corey won for physiology or medicine.
Okay.
Maybrit and Edward Moser, also for physiology or medicine.
That's interesting.
And then there's a father-son duo, J.J. Thomson and George Paget Thomson.
Okay.
Both won the physics prize.
Wow, so it's like brilliance runs in the family or something?
Right, like is it in their genes?
Maybe it's something in the water. Or is it just because they grew up around these incredible minds?
Nature versus nurture, the Nobel edition.
Exactly. Okay, we have covered so much ground today. I feel like my brain is like overflowing with Nobel facts. But before we wrap up, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Out of everything we've talked about, like, what's the most remarkable thing about the Nobel Prize to you?
That is a good question. I think for me, it's how the Nobel Prize still manages to inspire people, even after all these years.
Yeah.
It's bigger than any one country, any field, anything, really.
It really does go beyond just the people who win.
It does. It's a reminder that humanity, at its best, can do incredible things.
Exactly. Yeah. Even when things seem kind of bleak, you look at the Nobel Prize and it's like, oh, there's still good in the world. People are still trying to solve problems.
That's it. It's like a global celebration of all the good stuff. Creativity, innovation, people who want to learn and make the world better.
Perfectly said. Makes you want to go out and make a difference, you know?
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we've officially reached the end of our Nobel Prize deep dive.
We really went deep.
We did. Dynamite, debates, fancy
They
ceremonies.
covered it all.
But there's one thing we didn't talk about. You. What about you listening right now? What achievement do you think deserves a Nobel-style spotlight, even if it's outside those traditional categories, something that really makes the world a better place? Something to think about, right?
Definitely.
Okay, with that, we'll wrap things up. Until next time.